Changes for Molly. A Winter Story. Chapter 1. Hurray for the U.S.A. Molly McIntyre and her friends Linda and Susan stood at the bus stop waiting for the city bus to come and take them home. They had to wait under the movie theater sign because it was a cold, rainy March afternoon. But the girls didn't even notice the rain or the cold. They were too excited. They'd just come from their tap dance lesson at Miss Lavanda's, so they were warm and sweaty. "Our show is going to be the best show anyone ever saw," said Molly happily. "I can't wait," said Susan. "I've never been in a big show like this before." "Well, there's never been a show like this in Jefferson before," said Linda. "Practically everyone in the whole town has a part in it, singing or dancing or playing in the band." "Even my mom is in the show," said Molly. "She's going to make a speech about the Red Cross blood drive." "Our part is the best of all," Susan gloated. "Miss Lavanda said so. She said we're the grand finale." "The grand finale," corrected Linda. "Oh, whatever," said Susan cheerily. "We're the flag, and the flag is the most important thing in the show." Miss Lavanda, the girls' tap teacher, was in charge of a big show called Hurray for the U.S.A. The show was being put on at the Veterans Hospital in Jefferson. The hospital was full of soldiers who had been hurt or wounded in the war. Molly, Linda, Susan, and the rest of the girls in their tap dance class were the very last act in the show. They were going to dance and sing a patriotic song. They would wear red, white, and blue costumes, so that together they formed a giant flag on the stage. At one point in the song, the flag would part in the middle, and one girl would do a special tap dance all by herself. She was Miss Victory, and her solo dance was a real showstopper. Miss Lavanda had not picked a girl to be Miss Victory yet. While the girls were rehearsing, she danced that part herself. But during the next week, every girl in the class was going to have a chance to try out to be Miss Victory. Molly already knew the special solo dance by heart. "I can do the Miss Victory dance in my sleep," she said to Linda and Susan. She closed her eyes, held her umbrella up high, and did the complicated dance steps right there on the sidewalk. Linda and Susan sang the music for her. "Ta-da!" she said at the end. "Gosh!" exclaimed Susan as the girls climbed on the bus. "That was great, Molly. You can make that dance look good even in your galoshes. I'm sure you'll get to be Miss Victory." "Well," said Molly generously, "everyone gets to try out. Either of you could be Miss Victory too." "Nope, not me," said Linda. She plopped down in the seat in front of Molly and Susan. "I'd be too nervous all alone out there in front of everybody. I'd forget all the hard steps and just stand there like a dope. I don't want to be Miss Victory." "Me either," said Susan. "You'll be Miss Victory, Molly. Everybody says so." Molly blushed. She was very pleased. "I sure would like to be Miss Victory," she said. She tapped the dance steps on the floor of the bus, even though she was sitting down. "I love the costume." "Oh, it's gorgeous," agreed Susan. Miss Victory's costume was made of shiny blue and red satin and sparkly silver material. There was a big silver star on one shoulder and a star crown for Miss Victory to wear on her head. Linda turned sideways to look back at Molly. "You should be Miss Victory," she said loyally. "You dance the best, so that would be fair. But sometimes things aren't exactly fair." "What do you mean?" asked Susan. "Miss Lavanda is fair, and she wants the best dancer to be Miss Victory, and that's Molly." I know," said Linda. She squirmed a little. "But, well, in a show, a lot depends on how a person looks, not just how she sings or dances. I mean, think about that silver star thing Miss Victory is supposed to wear on her head. It will only look right on somebody with curly hair. It would look Dumb on somebody with straight hair like mine. Or braids like mine, interrupted Molly glumly. All her high hopes of being Miss Victory had fallen with a thud. She knew Linda was right, as usual. Linda nodded sadly at Molly. Yeah, I'm afraid braids would look dumb too, she said. No offense, Molly. Molly has very normal hair, said Susan. Miss Lavanda won't care. No, Linda is right, said Molly. Miss Victory should have beautiful curls. My hair is just brown sticks. She pulled her slicker hat down over her ears and looked out the window at the weepy rain. Well, there's no point in getting upset about it, said Linda kindly. Let's face it, your hair is just plain straight. It comes out of your head that way. You can't do anything about it. Oh, yes, you can, said Susan. My sister Gloria's hair is really sort of clumpy, but she gave herself a home permanent wave, and now she has lots of curls. Molly was interested. Gloria gave herself a permanent? She asked. Yeah, sure. It was easy, said Susan breezily. You just get a box of permanent lotion and you wash your hair. Or maybe you don't wash your hair. I forget. Anyway, you put the lotion on and you set your hair in these special sort of curlers, and then it dries and you take the curlers out, and you have all these beautiful curls. Linda looked doubtful. I don't know, she said. My aunt gave herself one of those home permanents, and she ended up looking like a French poodle. It doesn't matter anyway, said Molly. My mother would never let me have a permanent wave. Well, she wouldn't need to know until afterwards, Susan pointed out. And by that time, you'd already have the curls. Molly thought about it as the girls climbed off the bus at their stop. Does the home permanent kit cost a lot? She asked. I don't think so, said Susan. You could use your Saturday movie money. That wouldn't be enough, said Linda. Well, then I'll chip in my movie money, Susan said firmly. Molly needs to get curls. Linda looked at Molly. Do you really want a permanent? I really want to be Miss Victory, Molly answered slowly. And it does seem like a permanent might help, so... Okay, said Linda. I'll chip in my movie money too. But I'm still not sure about this permanent wave business. It seems risky to me. Oh, don't worry, Linda, said Susan. I know all about it. I'll give Molly the permanent. It'll look gorgeous. You'll see. When Molly got home, Brad was sitting at the kitchen table coloring, and Mom was helping Ricky with his homework. Hello, dear, said Mrs. McIntyre. Leave your galoshes on the newspaper by the door, please. Mrs. Guilford just washed the floor today. How was tap dancing? Fine, said Molly. She was thinking so hard about getting a permanent that she was frowning. Mrs. McIntyre looked up. Why so glum, chum? You're usually so happy after dancing class. She must have caught sight of herself in a mirror, said Ricky. Yikes, that would make anyone glum. Hardy har har, said Molly. That's so funny I forgot to laugh. Well, I have something that will cheer us all up, said Mom. It's a letter from Dad. I've been waiting for everyone to be home before I read it. Ricky, call Jill. Let's all go into the living room. When everyone was settled, Mom began. Dear Mary McIntyres. Suddenly, she stopped. Oh, she exclaimed. What is it? Everyone asked. Mrs. McIntyre's face was glowing. She tried hard to keep her voice calm, but it was so full of happiness it sounded wobbly. She read, I'm coming home. And everyone exploded. Hooray! Yippee! Dad, Dad, Dad! Molly danced around the room with Jill. Ricky cheered. Yoo-hoo! Hooray! Brad hugged his mother, who was wiping tears from her eyes. Settle down now, said Mrs. McIntyre, laughing. Don't you want to hear the rest? Everyone got quiet and listened as she read. My orders have been changed. I'm coming back to the States to take care of the wounded soldiers there. I'll work at the Veterans Hospital in Jefferson, so I'll be able to live at home. Of course, no one can tell me for sure exactly when I'll get home, but right now, it looks like I might be there by the 18th of March, maybe in time for lunch. It will be so wonderful to see all of you. I can tell by the pictures you sent that Ricky is probably a basketball star by now, and Brad isn't a baby anymore. And Jill, you look so grown up and sophisticated in your prom dress. You've become a beauty just like your mother. And of course, I can't wait to see good old Ollie Molly and taste Mrs. Guilford's perfect pot roast. I'll be so glad to come home. Hooray for the U.S.A. Lots of love. Dad. Well, exclaimed Mrs. McIntyre as everyone cheered again. Well, I can hardly believe it. This is the news we've been waiting for ever since Dad left. And March 18th is only 2 weeks from now, said Jill. Oh, it will be so great to have him home again, said Molly. How will Dad get here? Asked Brad. I'm not sure, said Mrs. McIntyre. I guess he'll come on the train. I think we better pick him up at the station, said Brad. He might not remember where our house is. Don't worry, dear, said Mrs. McIntyre. I'm sure Dad will find us. Let's phone Gram and Grandpa and tell them the good news, said Jill. Good idea, said Mrs. McIntyre. She started to put the letter back in the envelope. Oh, may I see the letter? Asked Molly. She wanted to read it by herself. It was such wonderful news. Dad was coming home. She read along and came to the last paragraph, where Dad said that Ricky was a basketball star, Brad had grown up, Jill was a sophisticated beauty, and Molly was just good old Ollie Molly, mentioned in the same sentence as a pot roast. Molly felt disappointed and a little hurt. Dad sounded so pleased and proud of the way everyone else had changed. But he didn't say anything about how she had changed at all. Did he think she was just the same dumb little kid she'd been when he left? She would have to show him that she had grown up, that she was different now, so that he would be proud of her, too. But how could she do it? Molly began to have a wonderful idea. The show! The Hooray for the U.S.A. show! Dad would be home in time to see it. What if Dad saw her on the stage, in front of a huge audience, dancing the special Miss Victory solo dance, looking beautiful in the sparkly costume, wearing the silver crown on top of long, lovely curls? Then he would see that she was grown up and different. He'd be so surprised and proud. Right then, Molly made up her mind. She would get a permanent wave so that she would have curls. She would be Miss Victory, and Dad would see her in the show, looking beautiful. Everything would be perfect. Chapter 2. A Hair-Raising Experience. That night, Molly couldn't sleep. Dad's coming home. Dad's coming home, she kept thinking. She felt the excitement growing inside her until she thought she would burst with happiness. She kept imagining how it would be when Dad saw her in the show. She would be wearing the glamorous Miss Victory costume. All the lights would be shining on her. Silver stars would sparkle in her curly hair. Dad would watch her do the complicated tap dance. Afterwards, backstage, Dad would say, "Why, Molly, you've changed so much. You're so grown up and sophisticated, just as much as Jill." Then they'd all come home and celebrate. Molly went through the wonderful imaginary scene again and again. Molly rolled over and stared up at the ceiling. What would it be like to have Dad home again, after he'd been away at war for 2 years? What would it be like to have him back in the house? Molly could remember the warm, vanilla-y smell of his pipe tobacco, and the sound of his voice calling out, "I'm home," at the end of the day. But Dad's face was a little blurry in her memory. She scrunched up her eyes and tried to picture Dad's face clearly, the way he really looked, not the way he looked in his army uniform in the shadowy black and white snapshots he sent from England. But she couldn't see him. Finally, Molly got out of bed and tiptoed downstairs to the living room to look at the old photo albums. She sat cross-legged on the couch, holding the biggest album on her lap. She stared and stared at the pictures pasted to the black pages. There was a funny one of Dad painting in the garage. He looked so tall and handsome and happy. On the next page, there was a picture of the whole family together, taken at Thanksgiving, a few months before Dad had left for the war. It was very discouraging. Everyone but me looks so different now, thought Molly. I look exactly the same now as I did then. Just plain old me. Molly, she heard Mom say. I thought I saw a light down here. Why are you up? I couldn't sleep, said Molly. I keep thinking about Dad coming home. Me too, said Mom. She sat next to Molly on the couch. It's so wonderful that he'll be home on the 18th of March, said Molly. He can see all of us in the show. No, Molly, said Mom. Don't go getting your hopes up. Dad said he might be here on the 18th, but the army often changes plans at the last minute. I'm sure Dad will do his best to get here in time for the show, but you can't count on it. Molly knew Mom was being sensible, but she was still sure Dad would be home in time to see her as Miss Victory. It would be so perfect. She didn't want to hear any discouraging warnings, so she said, I sort of couldn't remember what Dad looked like. That's why I got out all the old albums. Mom held half the album on her lap. She looked at the Thanksgiving picture. Grandpa took this picture. I remember the day very well, she said. There I am in my polka dot dress. It was new back then. I still wear that dress sometimes. It doesn't look so stylish anymore, she sighed. Neither do I, I'm afraid. She pushed back a lock of hair behind one ear. Look at Brad. He was just a baby. He looks so different now. Do you think Dad will look different? Asked Molly. Yes, he probably will, said Mom. He'll probably look a little thinner and a little older, just as I do. Do you think he'll act different? Molly asked. I don't know, said Mom. He has seen some very sad and terrible things during the war. War does change people. It doesn't just happen and then disappear, all forgiven and forgotten. War leaves scars on people, and not just the kind of scars you can see. But I think Dad will still be our same old dad at heart. He'll still love us. We'll all have to get used to one another again. It may take some time. We're all older. We're all different. I sure want Dad to see that I'm different, said Molly. I want him to see that I'm grown up now, not just a plain dumb kid anymore. But the problem is, I don't look different. Mom hugged Molly. Your dad will be so happy to see you. He won't care what you look like, she said. You know he'll always love you and be proud of you, no matter what. Mothers always say that, said Molly. Because it's true, said Mrs. McIntyre with a smile. And here's another thing mothers always say. Get to bed. Tomorrow is a school day. Besides, it's cold down here. You don't want to greet Dad with a red nose and sniffles, do you? Come on now, off to bed. Lickety-split. Okay, said Molly. She hugged her mother and went back upstairs, carrying the photo album with her. I will look different, though, she said to herself. I can't wait to get that permanent. However, Molly did have to wait. She had to wait 2 more days, until Saturday, when she and Linda and Susan got their movie money. The movie cost 25 cents, and they all got nickels for popcorn. Susan's mother always gave her an extra nickel in case of emergency. Luckily, Molly had 30 cents left over from a dollar Grandpa had given her for Christmas, so they had just enough money. The permanent wave kit cost $1.25. It's really nice of you to give up your movie money, Molly said to Linda and Susan as the girls headed to the drugstore. Well, said Linda, I hear this movie has lots of kissing and mushy stuff in it, so I don't care about missing it. Linda liked cowboy and Indian movies. Besides, said Susan, your dad is coming home. This is going to be the most important moment of your whole and entire life so far. You've got to have those curls, not just to be Miss Victory, but to show your dad how grown up and sophisticated you are. It's so exciting. Molly nodded. I can't believe he's finally coming home after all this time, she said. You're so lucky, Molly, said Susan. Your father's coming home safe and sound. Yeah, not like Grace Littlefield's father, said Linda. Mr. Littlefield's legs had been wounded in the war, and he would never walk again. Poor Grace, said Molly softly. It would be terrible to have a father who couldn't walk anymore, said Susan. I bet Grace is just happy he's home and alive, said Linda. Think about Miss Campbell. All the girls got quiet. Their third-grade teacher, Miss Campbell, had been engaged to marry a soldier who was killed during the summer. I wonder if Miss Campbell's soldier ever thought he might be killed and be dead forever, and never get to marry Miss Campbell, said Susan. Every soldier knows he might get killed, said Molly. That's why every soldier is a hero. Yeah, but it seems to me that once they're killed, they just go to heaven where everything is fine, said Linda. It's the people left behind on Earth who love them who have a harder time. They're sad, but they have to go on with the rest of their lives. I think Miss Campbell is as much of a hero as her soldier was. But she can be proud of the sacrifice she made for her country, said Susan. I think I would be more sad than proud if my dad got killed, said Molly. Me too, said Susan. Me too, said Linda. I'd sure rather be happy and have the person I love home safe and sound than be proud because he died a hero. Yeah, said Molly. Well, at least the war is supposed to be almost over. Our soldiers have pushed all the way into Germany. Mom says the Nazis have to surrender soon. I sort of don't get it, said Susan. How do they decide when a war is over? Does one side change its mind and say it was wrong and then surrender? No, said Linda. A war is over when one side gives up because so many of its soldiers are killed it can't fight anymore. Oh, said Susan. Well, it'll be great to have all the fighting end. I can hardly remember what it was like before the war. When it ends, everything will be wonderful. It seems like everything should be wonderful, said Linda. But I don't see how it can be when so many people will be sad about their dads and friends and everyone who got killed or wounded. That's why our Hurray for the U.S.A. show is so important, said Molly. It's a way to show the wounded men that we're glad that they are alive, and to thank them for being so brave. That's right, said Susan. It doesn't seem like very much, but I guess it's the best we can do, agreed Linda. By now they were standing outside the door of the drugstore. Now, when we go in, you'd better let me do all the talking, said Susan, because I know about the permanent. Okay, said Molly and Linda. They gave all their money to Susan and she led them inside. The shelves seemed fuller these days, now that there was less rationing. In the hair care section, there were lots of different shampoos and more than one kind of home permanent kit. Susan read one of the boxes. It said, Big, beautiful, bouncy curls for the new you. Oh, this is definitely the one we want, Susan said. So you can be the new you, the new Molly. Better get the extra strong formula, said Linda, because Molly has long hair. As Susan was paying for the kit, the drugstore man said, Does your mother know you're using this? Oh, it's not for me, said Susan innocently. It's for someone older. That was true. Molly's birthday was 2 months before Susan's. The three girls rushed out of the store and hurried back to Molly's house. They had decided to give Molly the permanent wave in their secret hideout, the room above the garage. Susan dragged a rickety old chair into the middle of the room. "Here," she said to Molly, "sit on this. It'll be just like a beauty parlor." She wrapped a dusty sheet around Molly's shoulders. "Some beauty parlor. For one thing, it's freezing cold up here," shivered Linda. "And how are you going to shampoo her hair? You don't have any water." "Oh, we can skip that part," said Susan. She began to unbraid Molly's hair. "No, we can't skip it," said Linda. "It says right here on the box, 'First shampoo hair.'" "That's probably only if you have dirty hair," said Susan. "Molly's hair is pretty clean already." "Gosh, it sure is straight, Molly. And it's kind of long. Maybe we should cut it a little bit so the curlers can hold it better." Molly felt nervous. She began to suspect Susan didn't really know what she was doing. "I think we'd better not cut my hair," she said. "If we did, Mom would be really mad." "Okay," said Susan. "I don't have any scissors anyway. Now let's see. I guess it's time to put the waving lotion on your hair." She opened the bottle of lotion. A terrible smell filled the room. "P.U.!" exclaimed Linda. "That stuff smells awful." "It smells like a wet dog," said Molly. "I don't want to smell like that." "Oh, for heaven's sake," said Susan. "If you want curls, you're just going to have to put up with the smell. I'm sure it wears off after a while." "Maybe this bottle of lotion has gone bad or something," said Linda. She was pinching her nose between two fingers. "Did the waving lotion Gloria used smell like this?" "I don't know," said Susan. "You don't know? Weren't you there when she gave herself the permanent?" asked Molly. "Not exactly," said Susan. "I mean, I didn't watch her do the whole thing. I saw her with the curlers in her hair, and I saw her after, when she took the curlers out." "Susan," groaned Molly, "you don't know how to do this at all, do you?" "Of course I do," snapped Susan. "Anybody can read the directions on the box and kind of figure it out as you go along." "Oh, brother," said Linda. "Molly's probably going to end up bald." "She will not," Susan began. Just then, the door swung open and Jill burst in. "What are you guys doing up here?" she asked. Just playing," said Molly. "What are you doing up here?" "I came to," said Jill. She stopped talking and sniffed the air. "Gosh, it reeks in here. What are you—" She looked at Molly sitting down in the chair with her hair down. Then she frowned and squinted at Molly. "Molly McIntyre, it smells like permanent wave lotion in here. You're not letting Linda and Susan give you a permanent, are you?" Molly, Linda, and Susan were silent. "Don't do it, Molly," said Jill. "Really, it's not that easy to do it right, and it'll look horrible if it comes out wrong. You'll regret it. You really will." "But I need curly hair," wailed Molly. "I have to have it for the show, and for Dad, and for everything. I just absolutely have to." Jill sighed. "A permanent isn't the way to get curls with hair like yours. It will just give you wrinkles and frizz. Listen, I can understand why you want to look good. I'll even help you. I'll set your hair every night between now and the show if that's what you want. I promise." "Really?" asked Molly. "Really," said Jill. Molly was relieved. "Gee," she said. "Thanks, Jill. That will be much better." "Yeah," said Linda. "We sort of knew we were getting in over our heads with this permanent business. Get it?" Even Susan had to laugh. Molly was very glad the hair-raising experience was over. Chapter 3. The New Molly. Sunday night, Jill and Molly began work on the new Molly. Molly didn't even have to remind Jill of her promise. After dinner, Jill said, "Come on, Molly, let's go up to my room." "What are you drips up to?" asked Ricky. "None of your beeswax," answered Molly as she followed Jill upstairs. Molly sat perfectly still on the stool at Jill's vanity table. Jill draped a towel around her shoulders and undid her braids, brushing out the tangles with long, smooth strokes. She took a few strands and wrapped them around her hand, trying to make them curl under. They just flopped. Molly sighed. "See," she said, "it's hopeless." "No, it's not," said Jill. "We'll set it in pin curls. It'll be fine." Slowly and patiently, Jill twisted strands of her hair into curlicues and pinned the curlicues with crisscross bobby pins. The curlicues were so tight, Molly's scalp felt as if someone were pulling her hair. The bald spots in between pin curls felt bare and cold. But Molly didn't dare make a peep of complaint. First of all, Jill might get mad and stop. Second of all, maybe it had to hurt for it to work. Jill was quite expert. She held the twisted hair with one hand and opened the bobby pins by pulling them apart with her front teeth. Molly watched her in the mirror. Dad was right. Jill was very pretty and sophisticated looking. "Jill, how did you learn how to do all of this stuff?" asked Molly. "Oh, my friend Dolores taught me how to set hair ages ago," said Jill. "Tilt your head a little bit forward so I can reach the hair near your neck." "I don't mean just how to set hair," said Molly. "I mean, how come your shirt always stays tucked in? And how come your elbows aren't scabby? And your socks wrinkle just right? How did you learn to look so sophisticated, like Dad said in his letter?" Molly was kind of afraid Jill might laugh, but she didn't. "I don't know," said Jill. "I guess it comes naturally when you get older." Molly sighed. "Even if I wore your exact same clothes, I still wouldn't look grown up." "You can't make it happen faster than it's going to happen," said Jill. "And you shouldn't try, anyway." She met Molly's eyes in the mirror. "Sometimes I'm sorry, because I think the war made us all grow up too fast. We had to kind of hurry into being serious. And I feel cheated, because Dad missed seeing us through some of the parts of being kids. He wasn't there to teach Brad how to ride a two-wheeler or to help me with algebra. I think you're lucky. At least you have a few more years of being a kid with him." "I never thought of it that way," said Molly. "I want Dad to think I've changed. That I'm not just a dumb little kid anymore." Jill thought for a moment. "Even if you don't look different, you have changed," she said. "Really?" asked Molly. "I have? Like, how, for instance?" "Well," said Jill, "the most obvious thing is that you want to be different. Gosh, you used to always want everything to be the same as it was before the war, which was really childish because things can't ever stay the same, especially when there's a war. Remember the fight we had about decorating the Christmas tree? You just wouldn't admit that Christmas was going to have to be different with Dad away. This year, you were more willing to change." Jill opened up another bobby pin with her teeth and then went on thoughtfully. "And you don't clomp around the house the way you used to all the time. You're quieter. And I thought you grew up a lot and learned to think about other people when that English girl Emily came to stay with us. You were very generous with her. You definitely act more grown up now than you did before." "But I want to look grown up," said Molly. "Okay," Jill laughed. "That's what we're working on here. But I still think Dad will mostly care that you act older. You really do act more mature." "Mature?" Molly was terribly flattered. Mature was one of Jill's highest words of praise. The opposite, immature, was her harshest criticism. Molly sat up very straight. It made her proud that Jill thought she was mature. "You're done," said Jill. "Try not to wiggle around too much when you sleep, or the bobby pins will fall out." "Okay," said Molly. "Thanks a lot, Jill." She walked slowly down the hall to her bedroom, holding her neck stiff as if she were balancing a bowl of water on her head. Suddenly, Ricky jumped in front of her. "Help! Save us!" he shrieked. "It's a porcupine monster from outer space." He clutched his head and pretended to faint from fear at the sight of her. Molly was about to sock him. Then she thought of what Jill had said and stopped herself. She just kept walking and sighed. How immature, leaving Ricky slumped against the wall behind her. Sleeping on pin curls was like sleeping on thorns. Molly tried putting her face in the pillow, but she couldn't breathe. She tried wadding up her pillow under her neck instead of under her head, but that made her neck hurt. The pins seemed to find a way to dig into her scalp no matter what she did. The next morning, Molly's head was groggy from no sleep. Her scalp was sore, her neck was stiff. She had funny red wrinkles on her face, and marks from the bobby pins pressed into her cheeks. But it was all worth it, because when Jill took out the bobby pins, Molly's hair was not straight. "Oh, Jill!" exclaimed Molly. "It's wonderful!" Jill pursed her lips and studied Molly's hair with a critical eye. "We'll try it a different way tonight," she said. "This is okay, but it's more ripply than curly." But Molly was very pleased with her new look. And at school, all the girls oohed and awed when she pushed back the hood of her jacket. She hadn't worn her hat. She was afraid it would crush her hair, so her ears were pink with both cold and pleasure when Susan said, "Gosh, Molly, you look like a movie star." Linda didn't go that far, but even she had a compliment. "If you took off your glasses, you'd look at least 12 years old, maybe even 13, she said seriously. All day long, Molly was careful not to move her head too much. Every few moments, she'd reach back to touch the ripples with her fingers, to be sure they were still there. Her hair stayed ripply right up to the time for the tap dance class. When Miss Lavonda saw her, she smiled. "Why, Molly, don't you look darling?" Molly's heart lifted. This was the week everyone got to try out to be Miss Victory. That day, Allison Hargate did the special dance first. Linda and Molly watched as Allison walked up the bleacher steps to take her position before the music started. The Miss Victory costume fit her perfectly. Allison's hair was so blonde and her eyes were so blue, she seemed to glow and light up the stage even without the spotlights shining on her. She looks great, doesn't she?" whispered Molly. Linda shrugged. When the music started, the girls who were Stars and Stripes sang and danced their parts without a mistake. But Allison started the solo too late and had to hurry down the bleacher steps, so she was out of step with the music. Her feet seemed to get all tangled up. As she danced on, she did better, but she seemed very glad when the music was finally over. Linda poked Molly and rolled her eyes. "She may look good, but she sure can't dance as well as you can," she said. Miss Lavonda made them all do the whole dance over and over, while other girls tried out for their solo. Molly danced better every time. Having the ripples bounce up and down on her back felt wonderful. There was only one problem. As she danced, she got more sweaty, and the ripples began to unravel and droop in a discouraged way. By the end of class, the beautiful ripples had pretty much disappeared, and Molly was left with a scraggly mess of straight, sticky hair. Unfortunately, the same thing happened every day. It didn't matter what Jill did to curl Molly's hair. She tried twisting it in rags, rolling it up in a hairnet, gluing it up with cream, and drenching it with hair lacquer. When Molly woke up in the morning, she would have waves, ripples, and even curls. But as soon as she danced, her hair would straighten itself out and hang as limp as wet noodles. In the war against her hair, Molly was losing. And she was sure she'd never get to be Miss Victory unless she and Jill could find a way to make the curls stay curly. Finally, it was Friday night, the night before Molly's turn to try out to be Miss Victory. She and Jill were desperate. "Okay," said Jill, as if she were a general preparing for an all-out attack on the enemy. "There's one last thing to try, the wet hair method." Jill wet Molly's hair, twisted it up into tight pin curls, then wet it again. Molly had to sleep with a towel over her pillow. Her hair was so wet. The next morning, Molly went off to tap dance class with her hair damp and still in the pin curls. "Don't take the bobby pins out until the very last minute," warned Jill. It was a bitterly cold day. Molly was afraid the pin curls would freeze solid as she hurried along down the sidewalk. Her whole head felt like an ice cube. But when she got to class and carefully took out all of the pins, her hair had dried, and she had glorious wavy curls. Susan helped her fasten the Miss Victory crown on her head. "Oh, Molly," Susan gasped. "You look absolutely perfect." Molly looked in the mirror. She couldn't help smiling. She did look perfect, except for one thing, her glasses. She took them off and put them inside one of her regular shoes. She knew the dance so well, she wouldn't need those glasses anyway. They belonged to the old Molly, not this new, sophisticated Molly, dressed in the gorgeous, sparkly Miss Victory costume. Molly took her place at the top of the bleacher steps as the music began. Everything was a little fuzzy in front of her, but that just made it easier to imagine there was a big crowd watching her. Molly pretended that in the very front row, smiling and clapping, was the most important person of all, Dad. At exactly the right moment, Molly danced down the steps in perfect time with the music. She danced better than she had ever done before. It was as if the music was in her feet, making them light, moving them along through all the fancy steps without a bit of effort from Molly. After the dance, all the girls clapped and cheered for Molly. Linda and Susan clapped the loudest. "Well," said Miss Lavanda, "it seems we all agree that Molly should be Miss Victory. Congratulations, Molly. You did a fine job." She handed Molly a small plaid suitcase with a silver buckle. "You may use this suitcase to carry the Miss Victory costume back and forth from home to class. Take good care of that costume. You've certainly earned the privilege of wearing it." All the girls clapped again, and Molly heard Susan cheer, "Hooray for Molly! Molly is Miss Victory!" Molly thought it was probably the most perfect moment she'd ever had in her life, so far. Chapter 4. The Show Must Go On. Just one more week until Dad comes home. Just one more week until the show. That was all Molly could think about. She was so happy she danced everywhere all the time. She danced along the sidewalk on the way to school. She danced in the lunch line. She danced off to rehearsals. She danced sitting down at the dinner table. Her feet were so full of excitement she just couldn't keep them still. "Holy Molly, you have turned into a jumping bean," her mother said early on in the week. "You never stop moving." "I can't help it, Mom," said Molly. Mom shook her head and smiled. "I know how you feel. Whenever I think about Dad coming home, I feel all fluttery with excitement, too. I just don't show it as much. Your face is all pink with it." She brushed Molly's bangs from her forehead and then frowned. "You're a bit feverish, dear. Do you feel all right?" "Sure," said Molly. Her throat was a little sore, but she figured that was from singing so much during rehearsals for the show. Mom stared at Molly. "Your eyes look funny, too, as if you're coming down with something. I don't want you to go to bed with wet hair anymore this week. Is that understood? You'll catch a terrible cold." "But, Mom," Molly began. "But, Molly," said Mom, "you don't want to be sick, do you?" "No, but—" "No buts about it. No more wet hair until right before the show. That's that," Mom said firmly. When Mom sounded like that, there was no point in arguing. So Molly had to go back to her boring old braids for the rest of the week. Actually, it was kind of a relief. Molly's nose was sort of runny. She was afraid she might be catching a cold. Besides, her scalp needed a rest from being a prickly cactus. But Saturday, the day before the show, there was going to be a dress rehearsal. Miss Lavanda said they would practice the whole show in their costumes, just like the real thing. So Mom let Molly sleep with her wet hair Friday night and keep her pin curls damp on Saturday morning. "Wear a hat," Mom warned as they all got ready to go to the rehearsal, "or you'll have icicles dangling down your back instead of curls." Molly, Linda, and Susan felt lucky that their act was last, because that meant they were able to watch almost the whole show while they waited to go on stage. There was a lot of confusion before the dress rehearsal finally began. The three girls sat in their seats watching Miss Lavanda herd all the nervous participants into their places. The show began with Allison's mother, Mrs. Hargate, singing the Star-Spangled Banner. She wore a fancy dress made out of shimmery green material. It draped around her, leaving one shoulder bare. "Gee whiz, she looks like the Statue of Liberty in that dress," whispered Linda. "Do you think she chose it on purpose?" Mrs. Hargate stretched out the high notes so much the windows seemed to shake. It made Molly's throat hurt just to listen. "Poor Allison," murmured Susan. "I'd die of embarrassment if my mother sang like that in front of all my friends." Everyone in the auditorium, especially Allison, relaxed with a sigh when Mrs. Hargate finally sang, "And home of the brave." But Mrs. Hargate looked very pleased as she walked away slowly off the stage. The next act was more lively. It was the Jefferson Junior High School Band. "Look, there's Ricky with the rest of the tubas," Molly said to Linda and Susan. Ricky and the other tuba players turned their tubas from side to side as they played, so that the huge shiny horns flashed gold under the spotlights. After the band, some little kids gave a skit about buying war bonds. Brad was in the skit. He held up a big sign that said, "Buy." Next, the mayor of Jefferson spoke. At the end of his speech, he introduced Mrs. McIntyre, who asked people to donate blood to the Red Cross blood drive. Molly held up her handkerchief to her nose the whole time her mother was speaking. She was afraid she might sneeze and make her mother forget what she was supposed to say. But she needn't have worried. Mrs. McIntyre seemed very calm up on the stage. She gave her message in a loud, clear voice, and then she sat down. "Your mom was great," said Linda. "Sure," said Molly as she blew her nose. She was very proud of her mother. Dad would have been proud and surprised, too. Before the war, Mom would have been much too shy to make a speech. Now she thought nothing of it. The church choir sang hymns next. Jill was in the choir, but Molly couldn't stay to listen. She and Linda and Susan had to go backstage to put on their costumes. Molly was very glad to take the bobby pins out of her hair, because her head ached so badly. But as she pinned the shiny crown to her glorious curls, she forgot all about her headache. She shivered with excitement and anticipation. "Here goes," whispered Linda, as she and the other Stars and Stripes took their places. The audience gasped, "Oh!" when the curtain went up and the giant flag of dancing girls filled the stage. And when Molly danced down the bleacher steps in her sparkly Miss Victory costume, the audience burst into loud, excited applause. They whooped and cheered and sang along with the music. Molly couldn't actually see the audience without her glasses, but she could hear them and feel their happy enthusiasm. She danced and twirled and tapped and spun, doing every step perfectly, in a sort of haze of happiness. When she was through, everyone in the audience stood up and cheered for a long time. They kept on cheering, even after the curtain was lowered, so the stage hands had to raise the curtain up again. When the curtain finally came down and stayed down, Miss Lavanda rushed out onto the stage and hugged Molly. "You look perfect, and you danced perfectly," she said. "The audience loved you, and that wasn't even the real audience. If you do as well as that tomorrow night, you'll bring down the house." Molly beamed. She wasn't sure what Miss Lavanda meant about bringing down the house, but she figured it was a very good thing for an act to do. She couldn't wait until the next night. Miss Lavanda would see. Molly would dance even better when Dad was in the audience. It was late when the McIntyres got home from the rehearsal. Molly was very, very tired all over. Her head felt heavy. It was hard to hold it up while Jill set her hair in wet pin curls before they went to bed. Molly felt weak and shivery. "I am not sick," she said to herself. "I'm just tired. I'll be fine tomorrow, because tomorrow is the day Dad's coming home. Tomorrow. But Molly's head still felt heavy the next morning when she woke up. Her throat was sore. Her nose was completely stuffed up. Every time she swallowed, her ears really hurt. Every muscle ached. I'll feel better after breakfast, Molly thought, as she dragged herself out of bed. But she could only pick at her breakfast. It hurt too much to swallow. She was sipping her orange juice very, very slowly when Brad burst into the kitchen. He was dressed in his best suit. "Can you tie my tie for me, Mom?" he asked. "Why, Brad!" exclaimed Mrs. McIntyre as she turned from the sink. "Don't you look handsome? But isn't it a little early to be dressed up for the show?" "I'm dressed up for Dad," said Brad. "Well, I don't think Dad will be here until late this afternoon if he gets here at all today," said Mrs. McIntyre. "We still haven't heard from him yet." "I want to be ready no matter what," said Brad. Molly and Mrs. McIntyre laughed. "All right," said Mom. "But remember, this is your only good suit. Put your napkin in your collar so you don't spill on it. Then you'll have to stay tidy all day." Then Mrs. McIntyre turned to Molly and said, "I know you're excited too about Dad and the show, Molly. But you've got to eat your breakfast. You can't dance on an empty stomach." "I'm just not hungry," said Molly. "Not hungry?" said Mom. She immediately put her hand on Molly's forehead. "Molly, you're burning up with fever. I never should have allowed this wet hair nonsense. Come back upstairs with me. I'm going to take your temperature." "I'm not sick, Mom," protested Molly. Her voice sounded hoarse. "I'm sure I don't have a temperature." "We'll see," said Mom as she led Molly upstairs. It turned out that Molly did have a temperature, a high one. "Oh no," murmured Mrs. McIntyre as she looked at the thermometer. 103 degrees. You'd better get back into your pajamas, dear. Why don't you go into my bed and rest? I'm going to call the doctor." By now, Molly felt so sick she was almost glad to get into Mom's bed and rest her cheek on the cool pillow. "It's probably a good idea to sleep a lot this morning," she thought. "That way I'll be in good shape for the show this afternoon." When the doctor came, he asked Molly to say, "Ah," as he looked down her throat. Then he looked into her eyes and frowned. He said. "You've got a very bad ear infection, young lady. You'll have to take this medicine 3 times a day, and get plenty of sleep. I'll come see you tomorrow." Mrs. McIntyre followed the doctor into the hallway. Molly could hear them talking softly together outside the door. Then Mrs. McIntyre came back and sat in the bed. "Well, Molly," said Mom sadly, "the doctor says you must stay in bed until the fever goes away. He says you can't go anywhere today." Molly sat up. "Mom," she said, "I'll stay in bed as much as you want after the show, I promise. But I have to get up this afternoon. I can't be sick in bed when Dad comes home. And I've got to be in the show. I'm Miss Victory." Mom sighed. "I'm sorry, dear. I can't allow you to be in the show. You're just too sick. I'll have to call Miss Lavonda and tell her she has to find someone else to take your part." Molly felt too terrible to protest anymore. She rolled over and buried her face in the pillow. Mom rubbed her back. "I know how disappointed you are," she said. "I'm very sorry it had to happen this way, today of all days. I can't think of anything that would be more sad for you, and I can't think of anything to say to make it better." She was quiet for a while, then she said, "Try to get some rest," and left to call Miss Lavonda. Molly hunched herself into a ball. All of her ached with sickness and sadness and awful disappointment. All her hopes, all her wonderful plans, everything was ruined. Finally, she couldn't help it. She began to cry. She cried until she fell asleep. A long time later in the afternoon, she woke up when someone opened the door to the bedroom. It was Ricky. "Hi," he said glumly. "Guess what? We just got this telegram from Dad. Here, look." He tossed the yellow telegram to Molly. It said, "Travel plans changed. Don't know when I'll get there. but will be later than expected. Can't wait to see you. Love, Dad. Molly didn't say anything. She just handed the telegram to Ricky and sat back against the pillows. Now Dad isn't even coming, she thought. Nothing is working out. Absolutely nothing. So, said Ricky with a sigh, you don't have to get all upset about Dad missing you in the show because you're sick. He won't see any of us in the show because he won't be there. It stinks, doesn't it? He kicked the door with his sneaker. But Mom keeps saying, the show must go on. So we're all going over to the auditorium later. Mrs. Guilford is coming over here to take care of you. I'm supposed to ask if you want anything now. Molly shook her head no. Okay, said Ricky. Oh, I almost forgot. I'm also supposed to get your Miss Victory costume to bring with us. It's all in the suitcase by the closet in my room, said Molly. She thought about how proud she'd felt when Miss Lavonda gave her the suitcase with the costume in it. Who gets to be Miss Victory? Allison, said Ricky. I guess because she looks so good in the costume. But everyone knows she's not half as good of a dancer as you are, he blurted out. As he hurried out the door, he bumped into Jill. I brought your paper dolls and your kaleidoscope, said Jill. I thought you might be bored up here. Thanks, said Molly. Her voice was so hoarse it was a whisper. I wish I were the one who was sick, said Jill. I really do. I'm just in the choir. No one would miss me in the show. But you worked so hard to learn that Miss Victory dance, and to get your hair just right. It isn't fair. You must be so disappointed. Yeah, croaked Molly. But I'm even more disappointed about Dad not coming home. I know, said Jill. It's very hard to be mature about disappointments like this. She sighed. I guess I'd better get ready to go. See you later. After the door was closed, Molly began to yank the bobby pins out of her hair one by one. There was no reason at all for curls now. Her damp, defeated hair felt like wet snakes, so she braided it up any old which way, just to get it off of her shoulders. Same dumb braids, she thought. I'm the same dumb me. But who cared? There was no reason to be the new Molly anymore. Besides, if she had not been so stupid about curls, she wouldn't have caught cold in the first place. It was her own stupidity that ruined everything. In a little while, Mom came in with a glass of ginger ale and some medicine. She looked very beautiful and smelled like perfume. We've got to hurry off to the show now, she said. I'm sorry to leave you alone, but Mrs. Guilford missed the bus. She'll be here in about a half an hour. And we'll all try to be home after the show, at about 6 o'clock. Try to sleep. She kissed Molly on the cheek and squeezed her hand. I'm really very sorry about all this, dear, she said, and then she left. The house was very quiet after everyone had gone. Molly played with her paper dolls for a while and looked through the kaleidoscope, but she couldn't get interested in either one. A cheerless dusk filled the room. Molly switched on the light. Probably the only light on in the house, she thought gloomily. She felt very lonely and very, very sorry for herself. No show, no Miss Victory, and worst of all, no Dad. She had thought everything was going to be so perfect. Perfect. Perfectly awful was more like it. And on top of all that, her ears ached and buzzed and didn't even work right. Right now, for instance, she thought she heard the front door opening. But it couldn't be, because it was too soon for Mrs. Guilford and way too soon for everyone to come home from the show. Now she thought she heard someone climbing up the stairs. Dumb ears. I'm home, a voice called out. It was Dad. Dad? Gasped Molly. She pulled back the covers and sprang out of bed. Dad? Dad, you're home? She tore out of the room and ran halfway down the stairs right into Dad's arms. She hugged him so hard that his hat fell off and tumbled down the steps. Her nose was squashed against his coat. but she didn't care. Without a word, Dad hugged Molly for a long, long time. Then he put his hands over her shoulders and just stared at her. Finally, he said, "Gosh and golly, Ollie Molly, you look exactly as I remembered you. Just as I've pictured you for 2 long years. You look perfect." Molly grinned. "Perfect," she said. Then she hugged Dad again. Absolutely perfect.